Okay, there's some tearjerkers here tonight. Okay, our next presenter, if I have it right, Chris Wong. Chris is a professional sculptural woodworker, based in Port Moody with over 10 years of experience working with wood. He operates his company, Flair Woodworks, teaches seminars at Lee Valley Tools in Coquitlam, co-hosts a weekly online woodworking show, and regularly contributes to woodworking forums. Through his insightful blog at flairwoodworks.com, his followers have witnessed him mature and watched his skills progress and his work evolve. Chris's writing tends to be concise, so he needed to write this extra sentence to meet the number of required words for his introduction. You can tell I haven't read this before. Thanks, Chris. You knew I wouldn't read it, is that why? Okay. You can see Chris's work in person at Port Moody's Celebration of Wood on July 20th. Please welcome Chris Wong.
I really wasn't sure you'd read that. Well, tonight I'm going to share with you some pictures of my work and some quotations which I have found interesting or inspiring, or some of the quotes are just kind of out there, but this is from a friend of mine in Phoenix. Being in Port Moody, he thought it was funny. So, a fine woodworker makes what he believes in. He makes what he sees in his mind's eye. When I set out to do something, I don't always know what I'm making. In the case of this table, it's got twisted aprons and twisted legs, and that just came through experimentation. This one here is a 12-foot dining table I built in Phoenix, and the tabletop is made of a material called waterfall babinga. It's a rosewood out of Africa, and to carve the edge, I just followed the grain, which undulates the whole way along there, and that's really what makes that piece really special. The highest reward for a man's toil is not what he gets for it, but what he becomes by it. This is a cribbage board I built here out of, this is apple. This came out of a property in Burnaby, and I've got a friend I work with who mills the wood for me, and the materials I work with provide a lot of inspiration. I learned you have to trust yourself. Be what you are and do what you ought to do the way you should do it. And that's really something, it's about accountability. If you try to live up to someone else's expectations, do something that someone else wants you to do the way that they want you to do it, it's really hard. Once you realize it's about doing things the way that you feel you should be doing them and what makes sense to you, everything becomes a lot easier. It's creativity and curiosity. It's the exploration, the push that makes my work. It defines my work. In this case, in the bottom left there, you see an example of what started this. Those are a series of thin pieces of ash, about 1/8 inch thick, and I want to see how flexible they were, how far I could bend them before they broke. And the result is this chair, which is made of thin pieces of wood, about 3/8 of an inch, and I made them as thin as possible, and it's almost going to break. People don't have confidence in that chair, but I want them to. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. This is a wooden jigsaw puzzle that I just felt went with the quote. Out of limitations comes creativity. This is a great piece. I had a lot of fun with this. I was working a trade show for Lee Valley in California, and we were practicing using hand saws and planes. So we cut a whole bunch of slits in the boards, and we had a whole bunch of shavings. And at the end of the day, cleaning up, I thought, I can do something with this. So that's what I did. Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. Just a moment of silence. Mother Nature is an excellent designer, and it's a mistake to ignore her influence. A lot of the materials I use, wood of course being a natural one, I like to preserve the live edges and the shapes and the cracks and all the natural inclusions and deformities that make wood unique, and I use it as a real inspiration in my work. This is the same table, you can see a different view. And I've left the top as natural as I could. I didn't want to remove too much. I could have machined it down to the lumber you see at Home Depot, the kind that we're all familiar with, a flat board, flat sides, straight edges, but when you have this awesome material, why wouldn't you use it this way? If I hadn't made the work I'm ashamed of, the ones I'm proud of wouldn't exist. To me, that speaks to experimentation. Every day in the shop, I'm pushing. I'm trying to do something that sometimes I haven't done before. I don't know if it's possible, or I think it's impossible. When I'm sculpting, you can read the quote here. When I'm sculpting, what I do is I start with a piece of wood, and I just start removing material. I don't have anything in mind. I don't know where I'm going, but it just evolves. I remove a little bit of material, and I step back and look at it, and I see it needs to be a little bit like this, or this is too square, or I like this piece of one section, so I'll leave it like this. And that's really how I do my sculpture. If I premeditate it, it loses its cohesiveness, I find. And this is, don't think. Thinking is the enemy of creativity. It's self-conscious, and anything self-conscious is lousy. You can't try to do things. You simply must do things. And that's right now my favorite quote. Even for this presentation, I could have done a whole bunch of planning, but instead I didn't, and just up here. Techniques are a starting place, and I do believe that in a sense, technique sets you free. Now, I just said that I don't do a whole lot of planning, but that's one thing. Preparing is a different thing. I can prepare by learning all these techniques, practicing them, knowing how to use them, and then I can apply them where I need. Faith is not being sure where you're going, but going anyway. This is a piece of maple left over from a previous project, and it spoke to me. I love this split down the middle, how it does the curve, and I had to use it in a project. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I started making something with it. So I continued my build. You see the tabletop at the top there, and then I eventually built it into a full dining table. Part of what I do, I use Twitter a large part. FlairWW is the hashtag I tweet under. And what I did is I documented every step of the building process in this table. So I think I took over 1,000 pictures, every step along the way. And followers were able to see and ask questions about how it was made. So that table is about 8 feet by 45 inches wide. And that's where we had Christmas dinner. In the hole. This was probably the hardest slide for me to do. So, this is a picture of me out in the yard I was turning a bowl. And to me, love is doing something not because you have to, not because anyone wants you to, just because it's what you want to do. And that's what I get to do every day.